Welcome friends to Farm Fresh Designs 59. If you're new to my channel, welcome, and thank you to the returning subscribers. Now let's get started with the IOD Spring Collection, and I'll be using the Lattice Rose Paint Inlay. So within this paint inlay set, there are 4 different designs. There are 2 sheets of each one, and they're really large. They're 12 by 16. And remember, the paint inlays can be used up to 3 times, if not even more. But what I'm doing now is I'm measuring off. I want to make a square from this inlay that's about 8 by 8. But the florals that are in this inlay, I want the pink florals to be right in the center of my project. So that's why I'm kind of cutting it a little bit awkward. But on the back side are the little lines, so you can make sure that you do it right. Now, this is an old cassette case that I found at the thrift shop for 69 cents. I was so excited. Now, the inside of it was so nasty, and I'll be working on that in time to come. So I finally got it all cleaned up, and I actually used Dixie Belle Boss to cover it up because it was just so old and nasty. And then I painted it with Rust-Oleum Linen White Chalk Paint. So here's what I'm doing. I put on the second coat of white paint, and I tried to put it on really even, and you lay down the paint inlay. You mist it, and then you dab it a little bit. You let it dry, which takes about an hour. You mist it again, wait about 60 seconds, and you pull it up. And it is just so much fun to pull it up. And remember, this is also paint. So you would not want to put like a wax on top. You're going to need to spray it with 50% water and 50% clear sealer to protect it before you try to put anything else on top. Now I'm using the IOD Trimmings mold, and it's one that's going to be long enough to go all the way around this particular paint inlay. So I make 4 different pieces of it. And I put cornstarch in my mold, and then I spread it out with my thumb, and I use Doss air dry clay, and then I run over it with an old credit card just to make it smooth. I put it on with Titebond glue, and I let it sit up for just a little bit. And I like to go ahead and paint my molds when they're still a little bit wet because it helps reduce cracking. Now, it's a little tedious, and I like to have a small paintbrush. And the bristles on the brush are super soft because I don't want to destroy the integrity of that mold and mess up any of the details. So it takes quite some time, but for me, it's worth it in the long run. Now, if you paint a mold with paint that is not white, you're probably going to see spots later on that you're going to need to go back and fix. Now what I'm using is the IOD Lock and Key mold because I want something on this particular suitcase to kind of jazz it up just a little bit on the front. And so I'm using the long, skinny Lock and Key mold, and I'll be putting that on the little flap that comes down to the handle of the little case. Now at the same time, I'm making 4 of the small fleur-de-lis that's on the IOD fleur-de-lis mold. And I'll be putting those on each corner of that square that's on that case. So that's where I kind of put them on, and when you make them with clay, you can roll them over and, just pinch them really easy to get them to go on. And then after they've sat there a little bit, you do want to go back because it's still going to pull up just a little bit. So you constantly want to keep checking on it to make sure that that clay doesn't pull up. Now this Lock and Key mold, it's pretty skinny, so it's hard to keep it in one piece. But I put that on with Titebond Thick and Quick, and then I'm going to go back and paint that white initially. Now what I'm using is the IOD mold from this past Christmas called Ginger and Spice. And I'm using 2 of the little girls, because if you haven't watched my channel before, I have 2 granddaughters that are major girly girl. And when they see this, I'm sure that they're probably going to think that they need it a lot. But I don't want to just put the molds on there. I want to add a little bit more to it. So this is from the IOD Swags mold. And I'm going to be putting that up in the top center of that paint inlay square. Now, I am a true lover of the IOD molds. And so some of you may not be addicted to them as much as I am. But if you want to try something like this, use the molds that you've got. Or if you see something you like, make sure you pick it up. And this is the part that I will put up at the top center. Now, over to the right is just a little mold that I made that I end up not using. But when you drop down from the swag, there's like a little fleur-de-lis on that swags mold. And I turn it upside down underneath that swag to kind of mimic maybe a charm on a necklace. Because remember, it's got to be girly girl. Well, then I realized I needed something down at the bottom. So I took a swirly piece, I'm not sure if there's a better name for it, from the IOD Classic Elements mold and put that at the bottom. Then I decided I needed to paint them all pink because the white just blended in too much. And then I mixed a mixture of Dixie Belle Apricot and Rust-Oleum Blush Pink to make the skin color on the little gingerbread girls. And I love it, and I can't wait for my granddaughters to see it. I'm sure they're going to steal it. So if you're enjoying the video today, make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you're not already part of our family. Okay, here comes the second use of this paint inlay. Now, this is just a little rocking horse. It's just a tabletop piece, and I've had it forever in my stash. So I pulled it out for this, and it was a bear to try to paint. But I went on to put Dixie Belle Boss on it just because I didn't know if it was going to bleed through. And once again, you put one coat on, you let it dry, you put the second coat on, and that's when you get ready to put the paint inlays on. Now, this paint inlay that I'm kind of cutting up, once it was finished on that first piece, I laid it over to the side and let it dry really good, because I'm going to reuse it, and you're going to be so surprised at how good it looks even on the second try. So I'm going to have to kind of snip and kind of cut here and there, and it's not going to be one full piece because I don't want to waste any extra paint inlay. And then you're going to just love the way it turns out because it doesn't look like I've pieced it when it gets pulled off. And this is that second coat of paint that I'm putting on. I lay the inlay on it. I mist it with water. And then I dab at it a little bit. Wait an hour. And then I mist it again. Wait about a minute. And then I begin to peel it off and see the magic. Now, this one is going to be a lot more lighter. The colors are not going to be necessarily as distinct and bold as they were on that first inlay, but I love the way it turns out. Now, I'm saving all those little pieces because I'm going to use them again. And so you pull it off super easy. Don't be in a rush to pull it off. And the more times that you use it, the more vintage it looks. And I just am so in love with this little rocking horse. So initially, I wasn't real sure what I wanted to do, but I decided to put some moldings down on the little rocker part of the horse. And so once again, I'm using my Dainty Flourishes mold, and I'm using the symmetrical pieces that match up. And IOD is amazing at making molds that have symmetrical pieces so that you can even make them double-sided. Now the Dainty Flourishes, it's pretty, it's really small, and so it's easy to tear off, but that little one piece tore off. I'm putting it on with Tight Bond Thick and Quick, And then I just kind of smush it together just a little bit, and then you can't even tell that that little piece broke off. Now, this comes from the IOD Laurel mold, and this is the smaller little crayon, and I'm going to be putting that in between the Dainty Flourishes. And then one last mold comes from the Acanthus mold, and I put that up at the top as like the eye. Then once I've let those set up for just a little bit, I go back and paint those with Rust-Oleum Blush Pink, which is a color that I don't know if you have it in your stores, but I had to actually order it online in the quart, and I love it. And I feel like I'm really getting my money's worth because it's in a quart as opposed to a small jar. So here's where I need your help. I didn't want to do the back side of it because I'm just not really sure what I want to do. So if you've got some good ideas to put on the back side, I don't want to put an inlay, I want to do something else, drop me a comment and let me know what you think would look good. Now, these are just scraps of lace and then eyelash yarn and that little string of pearls that you can get on a roll at Hobby Lobby. And this is one of those little mini bow makers, and you just kind of push it down in there. You've got the ribbon to the side right there that you pull up after you squish it all in, and you knot it up, and then you've got a bow. And I just glue that on with hot glue. And then I've got just a really decorative button that I put on top of the knot. Now, I did another decorative button on top of that mold up at the eye. And here's the final project with that second paint inlay, the second use of that paint inlay. And I love it. Now, I don't want to tell you what my age is necessarily, but I remember going to my grandmother's house and my aunt's house and seeing those really faded wallpapers from years ago. I think it's romantic and Victorian and shabby chic, and I love it. Okay, so I'm going to switch over and use another inlay, but you'll need to wait for that third use of the inlay. So this is just a frame that I've had. I painted it with the blush pink, and this inlay is like striped wallpaper. So the backing part of this particular frame, I've painted it white, and then I'm getting ready to put that inlay on. So I put the second one on, and then I put the inlay on top. Make sure that the grid lines are up, and then you mist it once it dries. Then you mist it again, wait 20 seconds, and pull it up very slowly. And if there's any excess water, you want to blot it off. And I love the way this turns out. So if you're anywhere near my age, then you're going to remember seeing wallpaper growing up, maybe at your grandmother's house, or maybe you even had some of this at your home. Now, this comes from the IOD Frames 2 mold, and it's the real large decorative one. And initially, I painted white. Now, this particular graphic comes from Etsy. I wanted a girl's face that was like Victorian. And so I printed it off, and I'll share that link below. And then I put it on with Pent Art decoupage varnish and glue. Now, I use an inkjet printer, and for some reason, mine doesn't smear. So I can't tell you why, but I know sometimes it happens for people. Now, initially, I put gold gilding wax on it, and I laid it on top of that paint inlay after I had sealed it, and it just kind of blended in too much. So I decided to go back and paint the frame pink, and that made it really pop off of the background of this paint inlay, and I so love it. Now, in some of these molds today, like this one in particular, is made with amazing casting resin. And these are things that I've already had made up for quite some time. The frames mold are one of my favorite molds, so I always try to make sure I have some on hand for projects coming up. And I use resin in a lot of my videos, so if you've not used resin, pop back onto some other videos and you'll see how to use resin. And then I just put this right in the center of this frame, and I just think it's beautiful. Note, also, after I painted that pink, I used white wax to kind of soften up that pink. And then later on, I used hot glue to glue the backing of this particular inlay that was on this background to the frame. And I just think it is just drop dead gorgeous. And for those of you who love Victorian ladies and shabby chic and romantic, this is all about you. I'm telling you, it's wonderful. Okay, here we go. This is going to be the third use of that first inlay I used. I wanted to show you what the third use looks like. So I just grabbed this circle that I bought at Dollar Tree, and it's kind of slatted. Now remember, this inlay's been laying over to the side and drying. And then I put the second coat of paint on it, and then I'm going to alternate those two patterns. I'll do the floral, and then I'll do the wallpaper, and I'll do the floral again, and I'll do the wallpaper. Now, in a minute, you're going to see me pull up that top piece of that inlay, and it was because I realized I put it on the wrong way. I realized that I couldn't see the grid lines. So I was able to pull it up real fast and flip it over, and then it didn't mess it up at all. See, I messed it up, so I just put a little bit more paint on it and then laid it back down, and then it was fine. So when you're using the inlays, make sure that you can see the grid lines on the back, and then lets you know that the paint is actually seeping into that paint on your project. And I go through the whole process again, and then I pulled out another frames mold with another one of those images and put that right in the center. And then I used a tiny little transfer from the IOD Traditional Pots Transfer. It's just something little that adds that extra detail element. Now, it already had like a piece of twine in it, but that's not going to work with mine. So I took that out, and I'm just using some scraps of lace again to make a little tie on it. And then I knotted on the back to hang it up. Once again, I pull out my little mini bow dabber with my eyelash yarn and scraps of lace, and I'm going to make a bow to put over on one of the pieces of hanger over to the side. I don't want to put it in the middle because I think it might block that image, so I put it over to the side. But while I'm making that bow, look at those images on that little round circle. They are still so distinct, so vibrant. And this is the third use for the florals and the second use for that inlay that looks like wallpaper. It is such a good buy. It really is. And this is what it looks like once I get it all finished and I get my bow all glued on. And I just think it is beautiful. So what do you think? And look at that. Look at the detail that still shows up using that inlay for the third time. So yes, the inlays, they are the most expensive item that they sell, but you can use it so many times. And here's the 3 projects that use that first floral inlay. This is the first use of it on that little CD case. The second use of it, after it's dried, is going to be my little hobby horse. And look how beautiful that is. You can still see so much detail on it. And then the third use will be just that little sign that I kind of threw together real quick because I really want you to see how much you get for your money's worth when you get a paint inlay. They are so amazing, and I love using them. So have you used paint inlays? I really do love them. And friends, we are at the end of the video. This went by so quick, and this is the final reveal with all of my projects today. I hope you enjoyed the video. It was so much fun getting this together. If you're interested in any of the IOD products with the spring collection or some previous IOD products, make sure to go to my affiliate link in the description box below, and Jonelle at Decoupage Central can get you set up. She is ready and waiting to start shipping all of these new items with the spring collection. But I would appreciate it so much. I get just a small portion of the sales and it doesn't affect your price at all. But please use my affiliate link in the description box below. So tell me today, what is your favorite? And one more thing, what would you do with the backside of that little hobby horse? And later on, I'm going to finish up the inside of that case, and I will show it to you in a later video. Now, the rest of my products will arrive tomorrow, so you be ready for what I'm getting ready to make with those. So once again, if you like the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And tomorrow at 3 p.m., I'm going to be part of a sunflower showcase at 3 p.m. So you be watching for that because it's going to be all about sunflowers and all the other amazing creatures. So I will see you at 3 o'clock sharp tomorrow afternoon. Thanks so much, friends.